April's second half Game Pass games have been announced. We have a new Star Wars game to talk about. Sega is rebooting some of their older IPs, and World of Warcraft officially announced their next expansion. So April's second half slate of Xbox Game Pass games have been announced, and instantly you take a look at this picture and it's nothing too exciting, nothing that's going to blow anybody away, but there is a very interesting announcement at the end of this article that we will talk about. But first, let's go over the games that we are going to be getting. We have F1 2021, which is going to be available on the cloud through EA Play. We all know what that's all about. The F1 racing game. Need for Speed Hot Pursuit Remastered, also available on the cloud through EA Play. F1 and Need for Speed Hot Pursuit, I believe, are already available if you just wanted to download them and play them on your console. After those, we also have another game that is available today, and that is Turnip Boy Commits Tax Evasion, which is an ID at Xbox game. And it is more of a puzzle solving cinematic style of game. Interesting that they are releasing this right at the heart of tax season, where everybody's trying to go through and submit their taxes on time, either being really excited about a return they're going to be getting or really sad about all the money they're going to have to pay over. But you have this one here, cloud, console, and PC, and it is an ID at Xbox game. So another one that's being brought out of those ID at Xbox shows. And we have 7 Days to Die. This is an older game. It's going to be available on April 26th. It's an open world game with first-person shooter, survival horror, and tower defense mechanics, and it has RPG mechanics as well. It's a sandbox style of game where you're just going around trying to survive, and we have lots of games along those lines, but here is another one that's going to be available for people who are into that stuff. Research and Destroy. This one's interesting. You take control of super scientists in turn-based action. I'd never heard about this one before, but I just quickly looked it up, and you have kind of like cel-shaded graphics and very, very colorful. Then you can see here kind of the turn-based action that you're going to be going through when you jump in. You have Bugsnax. What more to say about this? This is going to be available on April 28th. This was originally a PS5 console exclusive, now coming over to cloud, console, and PC, and available through Xbox Game Pass. Unsold. This is probably the one out of them all that I'm most excited for. This is available April 28th on console and PC, and it is a day one Game Pass game. They showed this off at the ID at Xbox show, and it's like an action RPG with really cool pixelated graphics, colorful, lots of different effects and particles as you're running through. The action looks like a ton of fun. Definitely one that is one that I'm going to want to play at some point. And again, it's another indie game. There have been so many great indie games in the first couple of months of 2022 that I feel like not a lot of people talk about, but indie games have been the showcase, I would say right now, of the Xbox Game Pass releases in 2022 so far. But that's it. Those are the games we're getting on the second half of April. April, I would say overall hasn't been the craziest month when it comes to Game Pass releases, but definitely stuff to play. That's the one thing that with Game Pass you always have. Yeah, you may not have the big hitting title, but there's always great games to check out that you've never tried out before, especially in the indie space. But this was the announcement for the games, but there was also another big announcement, I would say, within this article that has a lot of people talking, and that is the addition of Ubisoft games that are going to be making its way onto Xbox Game Pass, if I can find it here, but that will be coming over in the next couple of months. I skipped right by it. It was at the very top of the article, but it has to do with Assassin's Creed Origins and For Honor Marching Fire Edition, which are going to be making their way onto Game Pass, they say, within the next 2 months. And this is an expansion of the news that we heard that Ubisoft Connect, the Ubisoft app, Ubisoft Plus, was coming over to Xbox, which you're going to be able to jump into their subscription service through your console. Specifically, they say Assassin's Creed Origins will join the library for cloud, console, and PC via the Ubisoft Connect app, and they will also bring over For Honor Marching Fire Edition to PC via the Ubisoft Connect app, and upgrade to the Marching Fire Edition for cloud and console. So that's really cool because there's two things there. One, they're bringing over more Ubisoft games to Game Pass, I don't really know of any other big Ubisoft games that have made their way onto the service that I can think of. Like maybe Rainbow Six Siege is the first one that comes to mind, and then the other Rainbow Six Extraction, but I don't remember any other Assassin's Creed games coming. I could be wrong, but these are good games. Like Assassin's Creed Origins is an absolutely incredible game. Highly recommend playing this game when it gets onto Game Pass. If you haven't checked it out yet, I think you will be really surprised at just how great of a game it is. I've never played For Honor, so I don't have too much to say about that. But aside from that, it's that connection we're starting to see that we heard about with the announcement of Ubisoft and Xbox having that partnership of bringing over Ubisoft Plus to be accessed through the console. And maybe this means through the Ubisoft Connect app, we're going to start seeing more Ubisoft games coming on to Xbox Game Pass in the future, which I think is a great thing going forward, because there are some great Ubisoft games. And imagine if this partnership, them working together, turns into what happened with EA Play, and they just add their entire library over to Xbox Game Pass. Insane value that like you can't even imagine. Can't imagine them not increasing the pricing if they were to do something like that. But I'm definitely all for them bringing over Ubisoft to Xbox Game Pass. But that's it. That was the announcement. Like I said, the list of games isn't the craziest out there, but I think the Ubisoft thing has a lot of people excited. All right, jumping over here to a exciting announcement about a new Star Wars game in the works. Another Star Wars game that is in development. We know EA had confirmed that 3 Respawn Star Wars games were being worked on, including the sequel to one of my favorite Star Wars games, Jedi Fallen Order. Absolutely love that game. I think Respawn is an incredible developer. Everything they've worked on has pretty much been gold. So to know that they're working on 3 more games is great, but this was back in January, and now we have this announcement here that the former Uncharted director, previously at Naughty Dog, Amy Hennig, is going to be making a new Star Wars game under Skydance New Media. So that's cool, because this, as they say, is going to be a new narrative-driven action-adventure game, which literally is exactly what Uncharted is. If you've never played the series, you're pretty much going from point A to point B in a linear style of game with lots of cinematics, lots of cutscenes, and really interesting storytelling. And it seems like this is going to be the Star Wars game that really brings you in cinematically to the Star Wars universe in video game form. Amy Hennig has this to say: "I've often described how seeing Star Wars in 1977 essentially rewired my 12-year-old brain, shaping my creative life and future indelibly. I'm elated to be working with Lucasfilm Games again to tell interactive stories in this galaxy that I love." And this isn't the only game Skydance Media is working on. They also got the rights to a new Marvel game that we don't know what that is yet, but they're working on that as well, as this was announced in October 2021. Hennig saying, "I can't imagine a better partner than Marvel for our first game. The Marvel universe epitomizes all the action, mystery, and thrills of the pulp adventure genre that I adore and lends itself perfectly to an interactive experience. It's an honor to be able to tell an original story with all the humanity, complexity, and humor that makes Marvel characters so enduring, and to enable our players to embody these heroes that they love." So that will be interesting to see what they do, because I think if you're looking at a very narrative-driven Marvel game and you haven't played Guardians of the Galaxy yet, you should go check that out, because it'll be very interesting to see how her game stacks up to Guardians of the Galaxy in terms of a narrative-driven Marvel game. But overall, just another Star Wars game. If you like Star Wars, there's lots to look forward to, and I think the franchise now, in terms of video games, is in good hands compared to where it was about a decade ago, about 8 years ago, when literally it was only Battlefront games that we were getting. Yeah, sure, they were fun, but there was just a big drought in a great single-player narrative style Star Wars game. And with Respawn and now this, I think there's lots to look forward to. All right, jumping over here to something I think is extremely exciting. It has to do with some Sega IPs and reboots of Crazy Taxi and Jet Set Radio Future. So if you remember these games, these were bigger back in the day in previous generations, specifically Jet Set Radio Future, really big on the original Xbox after Dreamcast went away, and Crazy Taxi has been big just on multiple different platforms. I've loved both of these franchises, and I've always wanted them to bring them back in just a bigger way, and it looks like we may potentially be getting that. Now, this revolves around Sega's Super Game. Now, Super Game was something that was announced with the strategic alliance between Sega and Microsoft that was announced a couple of months ago, where Sega was going to be utilizing the Azure cloud technology in order to create their super game. And I think a lot of people, including myself, when we first heard that announcement, thought Sega's super game was going to be just one massive game that you needed the cloud technology to do, but it looks like that's not the direction that they are going, as last week they announced that super game is going to be a collection of smaller games. Now, the information about these games comes from, they say, the people, so obviously they're anonymous. They don't want to be giving away who they are, because this information, I'm assuming, isn't supposed to be out here right now. But Sega is really focusing on developing games that have reoccurring revenue sources, similar to Fortnite, where there are elements within the games that just get people to want to go and spend more money in the games as a service. We know that's where the industry is going, and Sega is trying to capitalize on this. But when it comes to Crazy Taxi in particular, they say it has been in development for over a year, and that it may release within 2 to 3 years. Now, when it comes to Jet Set Radio, we don't know where that game is, like how long it's been in development. They don't say anything there about that. But they do say both Crazy Taxi and Jet Set Radio were on Sega's annual report a year ago on a list of intellectual property assets that Sega wanted to recapitalize on and bring them up to date. The super game project itself is going to be led by the video game unit chief Suji Utsumi, who is a former PlayStation executive and currently includes plans for about 4 such titles, which again makes sense to what we were hearing last week, where they wanted to make multiple games, not just one big game. I'm guessing they're going to want to make multiple games as a service games and trying to get reoccurring revenue out of all of those, almost make it like a subscription model, which that's the way that the industry is going, led by Xbox with Xbox Game Pass, and everyone is trying to jump into that, build some sort of subscription, build some games as a service where people are going to be paying on a continuous basis to access the content. Now, on top of this, they say that the European studios of Sega are working on a first-person shooter super game. Whatever the super game adds to the first-person shooter, that is yet to be seen, but it plans to offer contents and services that create a large community and as much as 100 billion yen in lifetime revenue. Now, there's one thing to keep in mind here is this anonymous source also says that both of these games are still very early in their creation stages and could be canceled, which hopefully not. I mean, I would love to see both of these games come out, but if they are reporting it, it seems like there is some validity to this, and who knows when Sega is going to announcement, but it is all making sense to the information we're hearing about what Sega wants to do with their super game, multiple games as a service, reoccurring revenue. And I think you could definitely turn Crazy Taxi and Jet Set Radio into something like that. My concern with hearing about this is I hope it isn't just something that takes away from the greatness that both those games were, and that it's still fun to play, and that all of the reoccurring revenues that they're going to be putting into these types of games aren't going to ruin the overall experience. And finally, here we got the long-awaited announcement for the next expansion for World of Warcraft, and it's called World of Warcraft Dragonflight. Now, this is pretty much what the rumors had been talking about, what the leaks had been about. We got pretty much everything that they had mentioned in those leaks and rumors, and that this is going to be just a brand new expansion with new worlds, new class, new race, and just updates like the UI and the talent tree and all that type of stuff. In fact, this is a part of the game that was actually in the game's code and lore for, they say, almost 2 decades as half-finished land masses without texture. Some players were even able to glitch in to these areas, but now it's actually going to be a full-fledged expansion. There's going to be 5 new zones. I'm not going to go over everything because there's a lot of info here. I'll have the link in the description below, but the 5 new zones are going to be the Walking Shores, the Onoran Plains, the Azure Span, Valdrassus, and the Forbidden Reach. I'm surprised I was able to say all of those names properly, or maybe I didn't, but those are going to be the 5 new zones. There's also going to be a new and revamped talent tree, and you can see kind of like a preview of what this new and revamped talent tree is going to be like. And within this talent tree, it's going to have a system that's pioneered by the classic WoW gameplay, where you're going to be able to allocate points within their general class while also spending points in a specialized role. On top of that, it says here the talent tree is going to afford players greater gameplay customization possibilities than the current talent trees, but they'll need to be tested thoroughly to avoid balance issues. So that's kind of cool. You're really going to have to be precise with how you're spending your points. You can't just not think about it, because then you won't have a balanced character. But what's interesting about this is that this goes back to the feedback that was received for the Shadowlands Covenant systems during the expansions alpha and beta stages, which all that feedback was apparently ignored until it came out to everybody. The Wired player base got their hands on, discovered just it didn't work out. It was underpowered. And then Blizzard has now seemingly updated it to work better. But I guess we'll find out about all of that once players get their hands on it, start playing around with it, giving feedback, and we'll see if Blizzard makes the proper adjustments to make sure that this is a successful upgrade. Now we go over here to the new race, which is the Drakther. And the Drakther are humanoid drake natives to the Dragon Isles. Like Pandaren, they are a neutral race that can opt to support either the Horde or the Alliance, which is cool, while also sporting Worgen-like transformative abilities, switching between a more elven human form and a draconic scaled form. So happy to see a new race that I think if I do jump back in, I will definitely be trying out. There's also a new class called the Evoker, and they say here, much like Mists of Pandaria, Dragonflight also includes both a new race and a new class in the form of the Evoker, exclusive to Drakther. The Evoker leverages the power of the Dragonflights of Azeroth with a ranged damage dealing spec alongside a healing spec. There's going to be revamped professions, and they say this brings it more in line with Final Fantasy 14, more depth to it overall. And yeah, I'm sure they're looking a lot of stuff from Final Fantasy 14 and trying to bring over that to World of Warcraft, because we know how that's been going over the last little while, where people are leaving World of Warcraft and going over to Final Fantasy 14. And then finally, there will be a revamped UI to make it more modernized. When it comes to the release time, the release window, they say you should expect it no later than spring 2023. So still a bit of time to wait before this comes out. But hey, this could really be used for something that Xbox uses once the Activision Blizzard deal goes through. Imagine they announce World of Warcraft is coming to console, and then they launch it at the same time that this new expansion comes out. I think that would be a really smart move. Maybe it's in the works, maybe it's not, but I think it'd be a really smart move of bringing just more people back into World of Warcraft, getting them back into this MMO, as a lot of people have left. People just aren't interested in it anymore. But a new expansion with new content always brings people back. But if you were to launch this and launch it on a new platform, I think that would be a very smart move. If I was at Xbox, that's what I would do. That's it for me, guys. Let me know your thoughts on Game Pass games that are coming at the end of March. What are your thoughts on the new Star Wars game, the World of Warcraft expansion, and the Sega Super games? If you enjoyed this video, hit that thumbs up button. If you're new here, you enjoyed what you saw, consider hitting that subscribe button. Thank you all for watching. Thank you for your support, and I'll catch you in the next video.